Hey, souls and spirits out there, welcome back to this sacred space where we explore ancient teachings and spiritual philosophy and the mysteries of consciousness. I'm so grateful you are here with me today. And today I have a silent partner. If you're watching the recording, you can see one of our new kittens. His name is Apollo. He is very snuggly and he decided to join us today. So, if you see me petting a cat, that's who it is. Today's episode is an introduction into one of the most influential systems of mystical philosophy in the Western esoteric tradition, the Hermetic Principles. And in future episodes, I would like to do an exploration of kind of each one individually. But today, before we dive into the principles themselves, we need to grasp the history and the myths and spiritual currents kind of behind the Hermetics themselves. So, who was Hermes Trismegistus? What is the Emerald Tablet? Why did Hermetic teaching kind of influence all of the things that people are into today? Gnosticism, the Kabbalion, magic, alchemy, Freemasonry, astrology, even modern day spirituality. And perhaps more importantly, why are people kind of being drawn back to them today? Because I know they are very important to me in my life. So the story, like all my favorite ones, begins in ancient Egypt. Hermes Trismegistus, whose name literally means the thrice great, Hermes the thrice great, is a mysterious figure believed to be a fusion of two kind of gods. The Egyptian god Thoth or Thoth and the Greek god Hermes. Thoth is the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing and magic and measurement and divine knowledge and literally all the things. He was the one to record the workings of the universe itself. Now, Hermes, in the Greek tradition, was the messenger of the gods. He was the one with the wings on his shoes and his hat. He always had places to go. The guide of the souls. He was the patron of travelers and language and commerce and hidden knowledge. And when the Greeks encountered Egyptian spirituality, they recognized some similarities between these two divine figures and kind of combined them into Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary master teacher of sacred wisdom. According to the legend, Hermes Trismegistus authored thousands of sacred texts containing the secrets of the cosmos and the soul and alchemy and astrology and healing and divine law. Most of these writings were lost, but fragments survived. And those fragments shaped the mystical traditions of the Western world for centuries. The surviving Hermetic writings are collectively known as the Hermetica, and these texts emerged primarily during the Hellenistic period, roughly between 200 BCE and 300 CE. Give or take, particularly in Alexandria, Egypt. And Alexandria was one of the greatest spiritual kind of melting pots in human history. All of the wisdom was said to kind of travel through there. You had Egyptian mystery traditions merging with the Greek philosophy and Gnosticism and Jewish mysticism and early Christianity and alchemy and literally all of the things. And the Hermetic writings kind of reflected on this fusion. The Corpus Hermeticum, the Emerald Tablet. The Corpus Hermeticum consists of a dialogue between Hermes and his students about the divine nature of reality and rebirth and consciousness and enlightenment. The Emerald Tablet contained one of the most famous lines in occult philosophy, as above, so below, as within, so without. And that simple-ish statement became the foundation for, all of the things. Ceremonial magic, astrology again, alchemy again, spiritual philosophy or psychology. The Hermetic teachings were a philosophy of spiritual transformation, a map of consciousness, a method of kind of awakening. After the fall of ancient Egypt and the rise kind of Christianity, many Hermetic traditions and teachings were suppressed or hidden, but they never fully disappeared. They moved underground, into mystery schools, into alchemical traditions, into secret societies even, becoming encoded in symbolism. During the Renaissance, Hermetic teachings resurfaced in Europe that sparked kind of enormous interest among philosophers and scholars and mystics. Even Isaac Newton studied alchemy and Hermetic philosophy, and many historians believed Hermetic ideas helped shape the foundations of science itself, because Hermetic kind of traditions encouraged the idea that the universe operated according to discoverable laws. The mystic and scientific worlds were not originally separate, even. They were intertwined, and the ancient seeker studied both spirit and matter together. In modern spirituality, you might encounter Hermetic philosophy through a book called The Kabbalion, published in 1908 by anonymous authors calling themselves the Three Initiates. The Kabbalion distilled Hermetic teachings into kind of 7 core principles, and these principles became the foundation of much of modern metaphysical thought. Manifestation teachings, occult philosophy, New Age spirituality, natural law, all of these things. The 7 Hermetic principles are 1. Mentalism, 2. Correspondence, 3. Vibration, 4. Polarity, 5. Rhythm, 6. Cause and effect, and 7. Gender. Each of these principles described a universal law believed to govern kind of reality itself. And they are not presented as necessarily beliefs, but as observable truths, patterns that are woven into nature, into consciousness and energy and existence. And again, over the next several episodes, we'll explore each of these deeply. But today I'd like to briefly introduce you to them. 1. The principle of mentalism. All is mind, and this principle teaches that reality itself is mental in nature. Consciousness is foundational, and our thoughts shape our experiences and reality. 2. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. Patterns that repeat across levels of existence. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. The outer world mirrors the inner world. 3. The principle of vibration. Nothing really ever rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. Matter, emotions, thought, sound, energy, all of them have frequencies. 4. The principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Light and dark. Hot and cold. Love and hate. They're opposites that are actually extremes of the same thing. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows in cycles. Tides rise and they fall, seasons change, emotions move like a pendulum swing. 6. The principle of cause and effect. Nothing happens randomly. Every action creates consequences, and every effect has its cause, and every cause has its effect. 7. The principle of gender. Everything contains masculine and feminine energies, and this principle is often really misunderstood. Hermetic gender is not merely about biological sex, how I identify as a female. It refers to energetic polarity. So why should we talk about these and really study the Hermetic teachings? I feel like Hermeticism offers a fairly easy to follow framework that connects the mind and spirit. Science and mysticism, psychology, spirituality, cosmos, and the self. They are all kind of these crossroads that I feel like Hermetics can help us understand. And the Hermetic path is ultimately about self-transformation. Ancient alchemists were not only trying to turn lead into gold, they were trying to transform the human soul. Lead could have represented ignorance, fear, division, or the unawakened consciousness. Gold represents illumination and the great work, as alchemists call it, and was the process of spiritual refinement. And that perhaps is probably the true purpose of these teachings, not simply to understand the universe, but to transform ourselves through that understanding. You can find echoes of the Hermetic principles in many traditions worldwide. The Tao Te Ching, the Kabbalion, again, Gnosticism, Sufism, Buddhism, Hinduism, alchemy, really, indigenous cosmologies, even mystical Christianity. And I'm not saying that all traditions really came from Hermeticism, but rather that mystics across different cultures often arrived at similar truths through direct spiritual experiences. The language differs, the symbols differ, but the underlying patterns remain really similar. And isn't that interesting? I find it fascinating. And again, I say it all the time, there's a thread of golden truth that kind of runs through everything. And maybe that's exactly what these principles are talking about, even especially the principle of correspondence is kind of pointing towards. Hermetics invites us to observe, to reflect. It offers inner experimentation. The Hermetic path teaches that wisdom is not merely intellectual, but that it's experiential. And the teachings come alive when they are lived. And after today, we will explore each one individually, their meaning, their symbolism, their historical origins, spiritual application for our everyday lives, psychological insight into them, parallels across religions and mystery traditions. So this episode was like your initiation into the temple gates, let's say. Your journey into Hermetics has just begun. So until next time, may you seek wisdom beyond appearances, truth beyond that illusion, and the light hidden within yourself. So thank you for listening to Soul and Spirit Podcast today. If this episode resonates with you, share it with a fellow seeker. And join me next week as we begin our exploration into the first Hermetic principle of mentalism. I'll see you soon.